Hi, I'm John Lesky, recently retired personal financial planner and founder of finhealth, a tool to guide you to your financial independence. This is the seventh in a series of 8 videos that explains finhealth and how it can help you reach your version of financial independence. That is, having sufficient investment wealth to support your desired lifestyle indefinitely without needing to work. In order to help understand how finhealth works, it is recommended that you watch the earlier videos if you haven't already done so. In the previous video in this series, we examined the rationale for setting a target maximum growth asset allocation ratio, and, as this implies, a minimum defensive asset allocation ratio. This video looks more closely at an aspect of how both growth and defensive assets should be held in order to increase the chances of becoming and remaining financially independent. When you are relying entirely on your investment wealth to finance your desired lifestyle for an indefinite period, it's generally not the time to take more investment risks than you need. While you may wish and require your wealth to grow, effective wealth management should largely be about ensuring that in the quest for higher returns, unnecessary risk is avoided. And the most common way that investors take unnecessary risk is by holding a significant share of their wealth in a small number of investments. For example, 1 or 2 investment properties or a handful of Australian shares. On average, an individual investment will only perform as well as the asset class of which it is a member. For example, Australian shares or international shares or Australian residential property. But an individual investment may perform significantly worse or better than its relevant asset class. And it is impossible to know with certainty which of these alternatives will prevail. When wealth protection is a major concern, it doesn't make sense to expose yourself to the possibility of significant underperformance of an individual asset that can be easily avoided by holding the entire asset class. This is the rationale that underpins the old risk reduction adage that urges you not to put all your eggs in one basket. But the additional financial rationale for spreading risk broadly or diversifying relates to the fact that individual assets carry 2 types of risk. Firstly, risk related purely to the particular asset. This is known as non-systematic risk. And secondly, risk related to the relevant asset class or systematic risk. For example, when the inspirational Steve Jobs died, there was great concern for the future of Apple. However, his death had much less effect on technology shares in general and negligible impact on the US share market in total. Key man risk is clearly a company-specific risk that may lead to poor investment returns regardless of what the total share market is doing. Financial economists argue that you can't expect, that is on average, to be rewarded for taking asset-specific risks, that is betting on Steve Jobs' survival in the case of Apple, when it can be eliminated by diversifying broadly both within and across asset classes. You can only expect to be rewarded for risks that can't be diversified away. This is broad market or asset class risk, either deliberately or unwittingly taking concentrated or non-systematic investment risk that offers no expected additional return for that additional risk is inconsistent with our view of becoming and remaining financially independent. Therefore, in the finhealth framework, an important indicator of financial independence is the extent to which your investment assets are well diversified. The Investment Diversification Ratio measures the percentage of your total investment assets that are diversified, with 75% regarded as a minimum benchmark for financial independence, and the higher the better. For us, to classify an asset as diversified, it generally means that it is a managed or exchange-traded fund with the fund holding a large number of, or even all, or at least a majority of, the assets that comprise the asset class, for example, an Australian or global share fund. Provided it can be achieved cost effectively, we suggest more diversification is always better than less. Clients of wealth foundations, where I previously worked as a financial planner, were often surprised when we would categorise a large deposit, that is greater than $250,000, with an individual bank, as a concentrated or undiversified asset. In Australia, bank deposits up to the first $250,000 are effectively guaranteed by the Australian government. Our argument was, and remains mine today, why should you take credit risk on an individual bank when it can be spread across many banks and government-backed instruments through appropriate short-term fixed interest funds? Let's have a look at this ratio for our case study, the Barbers, discussed in previous videos. Their investment diversification ratio is 50%, indicating they are taking a significant level of investment risk for which they can't expect to receive additional reward. Their personal financial dashboard assumes their investment diversification ratio increases on a straight line basis from 50% to 75% over the next 19 years to Pete's retirement and remains there. However, the actual path may be very different, but to increase the chances of achieving and remaining financially independent, the finhealth methodology points the Barbers in the direction of thinking about how they should reduce their concentrated holdings of investment assets. As discussed earlier, while 75% is the minimum suggested level of investment diversification, the Barbers should be aiming to diversify their investment wealth as much as they can. In the final video in this series, we will go through in some detail how the Barbers would actually complete their finhealth analysis, and then use the software to see what, if anything, is needed to change in order to achieve their version of financial independence. I hope you'll join me next week. In the meantime, please provide any comments or questions below, and I'll respond to as many as I can. And thanks for watching.